Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Last week's conversation was a blast. I'm so excited to have you with me for this next segment. Let's get back to the show. Before we dive deep into this next segment, I want to zoom out for a minute and help frame what you're about to hear. Because what we're moving into now is not just another story or another example from my fundraising career. This is the hinge point. This is the moment where the entire conversation shifts from how do I feel about asking to how do I lead with boldness and clarity even when my background is working against me. In part one, we spent a lot of time talking about the internal side of fundraising, the fear, the scarcity mindset, the ways our upbringing or early career experiences shape what we believe is possible. And if you resonated with any of that, you're not alone. Every great fundraiser I know has had to fight those battles. But at some point, you reach a crossroads. You can either keep operating out of those old fears, or you can step into what's actually true about generosity, about philanthropy, and about the kinds of people who want to join you in building something meaningful. And that brings us to this next section. Here's why this next part matters so much. Eventually, the limits you've placed on yourself become the limits you place on your donors. When you don't believe people will give boldly, you stop asking boldly. When you assume someone can't make a transformational gift, you talk yourself into small visions, small projects, small futures. And the problem with small visions is that they never attract big gifts. This is where projection creeps in. Projection is one of the biggest silent killers of major gifts. It's that subtle, almost invisible tendency to look at a donor through the lens of your past, your fears, your financial history, your old experiences. You end up shrinking the ask before you ever get to speak it out loud. I've seen gifted, brilliant leaders get stuck here for years, not because they lack intelligence or passion, but because they're still seeing donors through the experiences of a childhood where money was scarce, or through the early years in ministry where people gave $25 a month, and this felt huge, or through a season when asking felt like begging instead of inviting. That was my story. But transformational fundraising requires a different posture. It requires vision, a belief that people want to make a difference, and courage to ask someone to step into a story that's bigger than both of you. So as we move into this next segment, I want you to listen with a particular question in mind. Where might projection be limiting your ability to lead with vision? Where might you be unintentionally shrinking your asks and your goals, or even your organizational impact because of something that has nothing to do with today's donors? Because the story I'm about to tell you isn't really about two deans. It's about two mindsets, two approaches to leadership, two very different ways of viewing donors and their capacity to do something extraordinary. This is one of the most important lessons I ever learned about major gifts. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It changed the way I asked, the way I coached others, and it even changed results. So with that frame in mind, let's get into it. Now, I'd like to take a moment and consider a story that illustrates how even the most ideal situation can go sideways when we project our own money issues on a donor. I call this one a tale of two deans. The college knew the alumni well. He was a donor of record who had given gifts as large as $250,000 and was one of the most generous donors they had. College leadership knew with great certainty that the donor could give many times $250,000. Even better, the college dean, we'll call him Dean number one, He had a 30-year history with the donor and had even been his professor. Furthermore, the donor's PhD advisor was like a father to the donor. The advisor was retiring, and Dean number one knew this was the perfect time to ask the donor and to create an endowed chair to honor that advisor. This is the type of situation we as fundraisers all hope for: the right ask at the right time. So a series of conversations, emails, and phone calls took place. Ultimately, a proposal was shared, and in the pivotal conversation, the dean had just one job: ask for $2.5 million. All of it, all at once. It was a scripted conversation. When the moment came, instead of asking for a $2.5 million gift, dean number one balked and asked the donor to give the $2.5 million over 5 years. In the crucial moment, his fear got the best of him, and he didn't have the courage to ask for the full amount up front. A few years later, another dean, we'll call him Dean number two, came along. Now, Dean number two, after getting to know the donor, set up a meeting to discuss the pledge and to explore if it could be paid off more quickly. He discovered that the donor had already taken the $2.5 million and put it in a special account to pay the pledge and could have actually paid it off at any time. It became very clear that Dean number one had misjudged the situation. So why did Dean number one bungle the ask? Well, when we consider his background, it became very clear very quickly. Dean number one was from a humble farming background and came from a family culture where people took pride in making do with what they had. He didn't like to make waves or to risk upsetting people. His anxiety about asking for too much and fear of seeming pushy caused him to fumble what was otherwise the perfect opportunity to make a powerful ask. Fortunately, his successor, Dean number two, was not operating out of fear or worry. He was fundraising from a place of confidence, clarity, and vision. And that's what we're going to explore next. Confidence and vision are crucial when you're fundraising. Vision is magnetic because it gives donors a role to play. When someone writes a large check, they're saying, I see myself in that story. That's why the most powerful ask you can ever make isn't, will you help us meet our goal? It's, will you join us in building this future? And that future has to be painted in color. Numbers alone don't inspire generosity. People need to see the movement. People need to see the change. The more tangible and emotionally grounded your description, the easier it becomes for donors to imagine their impact. But, and this is critical, casting big vision requires emotional steadiness. The fear of rejection, anxieties about budgets, constant comparison to larger institutions, all of that noise can pull a leader back into a vision that's small. Confidence is what keeps you from shrinking the dream. It's what lets you stand in front of a donor and say, we are building something worthy of your trust, without flinching. Now, Dean number two in this story didn't just ask if it were possible to accelerate the pledge payments. He explained to the donor there was a brilliant scientist who could be recruited right now, whose presence right now could transform the school's entire research enterprise and attract millions more in NIH funding, commercialization opportunities, and even internal investment from the university. But if he had to wait 3 years for the remainder of the pledge, it was unlikely that he would still be available and that opportunity would be lost. Dean number two cast a vision. He explained the clear difference that this gift could make right now, and this allowed him to make the successful case for why this donor should accelerate his pledge payments. Here's the truth. A vague vision may make a donor suspicious even, but a clear one makes them excited, even brave. When a donor senses that leadership knows what's going on and how it will get there, the risk in giving feels smaller. They see not just potential, but capability. And when you Describe how their specific gift fuels that capability. The abstract becomes personal. That is why CEOs and executive directors have to take ownership of articulating vision. Even the best written case statement can't substitute for the authority and authenticity that comes from the person at the top. Donors want to hear it from you. They want to look across the table and see conviction in your eyes. Now, we'll talk more about how CEOs are every organization's best potential fundraiser, but we're going to move on to something else for the moment. Now, vision doesn't mean grandiosity. It doesn't mean pretending your organization is larger or more powerful or influential than what it is. True vision is about focus. It's about naming the difference in your organization that it's uniquely positioned to make and describing it in vivid human terms, fleshing out clearly both the immediate impact and the downstream implications of that impact. When I coach nonprofit leaders, I ask them to finish the sentence. If we succeed, what will be different in the world? Then I ask them to think even more broadly by asking them, what will change in the world today and in the future because of that difference? These questions cut through jargon and force clarity. It's not about what you'll build or how much you'll raise. It's about what will change. Once a leader answers these questions, everything else falls into place. Strategy, staffing, budgeting, communication, all of it aligns around that central picture. So here's another reflection question for you. If your organization succeeds, what will be different in the world? What will change in the world today and the future because of that difference? You can test the strength of your vision by asking 3 follow-up questions. Can you describe it in one sentence without using internal jargon? Can your board members repeat it accurately? Can a donor picture what success looks like? If the answer to any of those is no, the vision still needs refinement. Donors won't believe what they can't visualize. As you are considering your vision, it's crucial that you think just like a storyteller. Describe the world you're building, not just the problem you're solving. Instead of saying, we're addressing food insecurity, say, we are creating a community where every family can sit down to a table with dignity. That's vision language. Another key element of leadership vision is proportionality. When I meet executives preparing for major solicitations, I often ask, is your vision sized to your donors or to your comfort zone? More often than not, it's the latter. Leaders hesitate to dream out loud because they fear looking unrealistic. But donors don't expect perfection. They expect purpose. A big, credible, well-reasoned vision inspires confidence, even when it stretches comfort. People of means want to solve big problems. If your description of the future feels too modest, you unintentionally limit what they imagine giving. When you create a great big vision that solves a big problem, only then can you expect big gifts. So here's a practical framework for communicating vision effectively. 1, anchor in purpose. Begin with why the work exists and connect it to human outcomes. 2, describe the future. Paint a specific picture of what success looks like. Use sensory language. 3, show the path. Outline how gifts translate into measurable action. 4, name the impact. Quantify results without losing your emotional thread. And lastly, invite partnership, and with a direct invitation to join that future. Every successful major gift conversation follows this pattern, whether it's spoken instinctively or planned intentionally. And here's something else. Vision is renewable. Every conversation you have is a chance to recharge it for yourself and for others. The more often you articulate your future out loud, the more real it becomes. That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.